People rioting, drinking and sports culture, salaries not going up, cost of living going up, bad weather, not safe to go outside. So I've decided last year of November to book a one-way flight, and I honestly don't regret it since. It was one of the best decisions I have made having been out of the UK for more than 6 months. So which country did I go to? And that is Malaysia, living in the quiet side, warm weather, everything that I need and want. It was something I honestly craved and needed when I was living in the UK. Now, I'm not going to put Malaysia on a pedestal here because it does have its flaws, but how I was living before and now is completely different. I have a much better life here, and overall, I feel happier here. Prior to leaving the UK, I've been living in England and Wales my whole life since I am British, and since 2024 I've became very miserable. I was living a life of quiet desperation, so I decided to make changes even though life of digital nomad was very new to me back then. I never thought I was going to make this decision, but I did because my life back home was just so bad, man, that I just couldn't tolerate it anymore. I feel like right now I position myself very well because since 2021, I was saving money, living incredibly frugal like the NFL player Chad Johnson, saving majority of my paychecks. I was putting money into savings accounts and stocks and shares ISA, which helped me a lot, while at the same time I was working a lot too, which both benefit each other despite a low salary and high cost of living. If I never did this for more than 2 years, then this just wouldn't be possible. Now, one of my biggest regrets at this time when I was living in the UK was I wish I kept my money in Bitcoin back in 2024 and held on by the end of last year because Bitcoin went up to 100k at one point. I could have got some great change out of it, but I just didn't see this coming, honestly, and I probably won't ever invest in crypto again. Even though I held Bitcoin at one point when it was at between 35 or 40k, I think, but I sold it before 100k because I got distracted by other altcoins, right? And you know how it is in this crypto game, they convince you that, oh, this coin will go to the moon and that coin will go to the moon. But I did put money to other altcoins, but I just got out because I was diversing myself too much, and it just honestly became tempting to pour into so many different altcoins, right? And it's like, how many altcoins do I need to put money into? It's just a never ending cycle. But if I just held on to Bitcoin, I would have had more money than I do now. You know, if someone came up to me and told me that forget about all those altcoins, just put into Bitcoin, but I just missed out on the opportunity, man. While I was living in the UK, there were a lot of issues that frustrated me so much that I'm going to talk about. One of them was people. I remember just dealing with anhedonia for more than 2 years, to the point recently in Malaysia, I went to a doctor finding out what's really wrong with me because I was dealing with this for a long time. Because I just didn't enjoy anything anymore and I just became really depressed. And if you don't know what anhedonia is activities that you used to enjoy before you don't enjoy it anymore. But in my case, I just didn't enjoy anything. So the doctor, who was also based in London, surprisingly living in Malaysia, told me to take vitamin D supplements, and I'm taking that right now. And honestly, for the past 5, 6 days, I've been feeling way better and I'm starting to enjoy life as I'm recording this right now, since I've been living a very active life. But my anhedonia, I believe, stemmed from just me not fitting in with people when I was in the UK. I just felt really lonely up there. People were just very mean. There's a huge crabs in the bucket mentality and tall poppy syndrome. I have, dealt with this a lot. There are people up there that just don't like people who are ambitious and willing to put the work in to change their life. And this been happening, for decades up there, and I'm not sure why. Not to me, but it's always been this type of culture up there, and I honestly don't know why this the case. If you guys know, feel free to let me know in the comment section why there's a tall poppy syndrome and a crabs in the bucket mentality. But believe it or not, guys, I had people that criticized me up there, hated me, called me crazy, laughed at me, and tried to drag me down, which just became very ugly for me, right? People will probably not believe this. I mean, you guys will probably not believe this on video, but this did happen to me. Like, I don't know how can people be like this, but honestly, I was going through this with people consistently in the UK. They just couldn't understand how a guy in his early 20s just worked and not socialized or partied. But I lived this way for many years, which helped me a lot right now, and I was kind of immune to that lifestyle, right? Because I was just more conditioned with, with my mindset at the time. It was like, well, if I put this work in, it's gonna help me a lot where I could start businesses, bootstrap my ideas, but it turns out I went on to a digital nomad life instead. But because of this backlash I got from people, being criticized, called crazy, being laughed at consistently, which is a common thing in the UK, people taking the piss out of each other. I was constantly battling negative thoughts. I mean, it was crippling. And just because of this, I became a very angry person because I honestly was dealing with this every day. But now that I'm in Malaysia, I feel better that I don't have to deal with this anymore. And thankfully, I got out. Now, at the time when I was living in England, guys, I was on my Nipsey Hustle grind. Now, if you don't know what I mean by this, one of my favorite projects of his is Mailbox Money, which I think was released in 2014, which was a great era for music. A lot of hits came out, and those hits uh, turned into trends, right? I think it was Vine. Vine was very big back then, right? Um, so I remember in Mailbox Money, there's a record called Overtime. And in that record, some part of the soundtrack, Nipsey Hussle goes that I need the money to change this shit. Maybe I'm just too ambitious, which he was talking about needing money to change the music business, which I think he somewhat did. And while I was listening to that record, guys, I decided to apply that mentality into my life, right? Wearing the same clothes, commuting on the bike, working, and just going home while monitoring all of my expenses, making money and saving money. And the crazy thing is, guys, Nipsey Hussle at one point spoke about this, right? He goes that I need to go back to Penny Pinch. I think this was a time, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is a time when he went broke while pursuing music. And I kind of took on the same route where I was, you know, s- as I said earlier, wearing the same clothes, commuting on a bike, working and saving money, which today I swear just, helped me a lot. And I can't express how life changing this was and the importance of, long term thinking, which in the UK is conditioned in us to really think short term, especially now with people having a hopeless mentality. But when I approached life this way, people just constantly bashed me, laughed at me being in my shoes. You just begin to, fucking hate people and society, which I did for a long time, hated people, which I felt like this for more than a year. But that energy just doesn't help. It just pushes people away from you, and it's not a nice way to really present yourself to people because you can miss out on a lot of opportunities, right? So there is a problem with Gen Z that I've noticed. I'm sure probably you guys noticed as well. that Gen Z condition you to play defense rather than offense, right? What I mean by that is being closed off socially rather than being open. Now, I could talk about this, I can have an opinion about this because I am Gen Z myself, being born in 2001, which I feel like I'm very lucky to be born that year because I grew up way before the social media era, and it was a period I don't know if you guys experienced or you guys probably experienced it. I really enjoyed different things before 2016, and with Gen Z, I find to be very rude and avoiding eye contact with other people and purposely ignoring them, and just overall negative towards others in terms of mindset, behavior patterns. And the issue is we're just really awkward and barely socializing, being on our smartphones a lot. This experience I faced with Gen Z made me, isolate myself, where for more than 2 years I lived in my room a lot, barely socializing, just going to work or home, which I've mentioned early in this video. But this made me tap into my fantasies and I became very out of touch with society. Now, what became a wake up call for me was discovering the movie Taxi Driver, which is one of the best movies that I've watched. It's just crazy how relatable the character is and how much of a warning this movie is for 2026. I feel like some people might need to watch it as it's a movie that I really enjoyed watching. And I made a which what I would do is make a future video on this just to warn you guys not to end up like Travis. But this movie's about a guy being a taxi driver in New York, just crippled by loneliness, which when I watched the movie and other YouTube videos breaking this movie down, I just related to Travis so much and it made me not want to be like Travis. And I recently broke out of this cycle of isolation and decided to socialize now when I one day asked Google, do introverts make more money or extroverts? And to my surprise, extroverts apparently make more money. And I honestly don't know if it's true, but bro, why did it take me so long to realize this, right? If I realized this when I was back home, I would have just approached life differently. Who really inspires me right now is surprisingly Big Meech. For those of you who don't know this guy, he made a lot of money in the drug business. I'm not really inspired because of the business he was in, but it was mainly his characteristics. I mean, this guy had such quality traits that you don't normally see in the corporate world in today's time and in the past as well, but it really motivated me to approach life like Big Meech, just him having great people around him at that time when he was in that business. And apparently from the research I done on him, he is actually, I think he's an extrovert, but I could be wrong, but look at how he operated the organization, being very social and charismatic from the old interview that I watched of him. I remember watching the old interview of him that I think was released 14 years ago and just being like, man, this guy is just so cool. I've never seen anyone like him. But I have a picture of him on my phone holding chains in both hands. When I look at this picture, it just inspires me so much due to the traits he applied with his business at the time that I want to incorporate the traits in my life to better, the situation I'm in. But after I find out about, well, I mean, after I found out about Big Meech and apparently, finding out that extroverts making more money than introverts, I was like, bro, why am I still living like how I'm living right now? Not I mean now, but in the past. And that was the moment that I decided that I'm going to go out and socialize with people, which is actually recently, um, 5, 6 days ago. And I've been constantly watching the Big Meech interview that was released 14 years ago. And what I've been doing, I've been smiling at everyone, greeting people, asking questions, and just overall being nice to, people. And I get that energy back in return. And what's more important is the difference I feel mentally. It's just enormous. I just feel better. But when I was isolating myself, there was just not a day that went by where I was constantly, battling negative thoughts, and it just became a way of life, for me in the UK. And I was feeling like this when I was early on this digital nomad journey, and I didn't know what positive thinking felt like because I was battling negative crippling thoughts for a long time, and even anhedonia on top of that, which was honestly killing me inside, right? So now, recently, after I've been taking vitamin D supplements, I've been going on walks, I've been swimming, socializing with people, and now after a long time, I just feel better mentally and got enjoyment back after a long time. And ever since I left the UK, I just feel as though it's just getting worse. When I see online the riots, I think the recent one was in Belfast, which, messes me up just looking at the state of the UK. But I just can't continue keeping up to date with the UK because there's nothing I can do to change the situation, right? Besides, the only thing that I can do is just focus on my life and figuring out how to better my own life. I realized one thing about life. I don't know if this is a horrible thing to awareness, but this is like a solo game where every single person on this earth uh, is operating on a solo way of life where you have to figure life on your own, and there's nothing people can do to help you besides just giving you information, and it's all on to you just to change it, right? To change the situation through execution. So I haven't checked for weeks what's been happening in the UK because it just makes me feel, negative. You could be a rich person in the UK and your quality of life will never match a rich person in America, let alone an upper class family. But this is just my opinion. I just felt as though there was nothing to do up there, even though there are various other activities. I just didn't feel motivated to go outside. It's just I just felt bored. The weather did not help at all. Now in the UK, the drinking and sports culture is heavily ingrained in that environment, right? It's a big thing up there. I remember there was a huge England game on. I remember going outside and there was no one outside. It was just people in pubs and clubs just watching this game. And I'm not really against this type of lifestyle. I just feel like I never fitted in that environment, even though I love to drink wine and champagne. It just feels as though we are, conditioned to believe that that's the only way to have fun when there's just so much other things to do. And I've realized this ever since I left the UK. Now, ever since I came to Malaysia, I feel like there's so much activities that I can do, and I'm excited to do different activities that I mentioned earlier about swimming, walking, and I'll probably incorporate other activities as well. But I wouldn't have, had the opportunity if I was in the UK and stayed in the UK because, as I said earlier, with the conditioning we get, and plus the weather just didn't really help, which really decreases my mood. But in Malaysia, as I'm here, and in Vietnam, the weather's a bonus, which just keeps me happy. But I remember, excuse me, being in Vietnam, Da Nang, and seeing parachutes. above the beach, and it just looked so much fun. And even in Malaysia, exploring Buddhist temples, you don't really see stuff like that in the UK. And it's just about let's go out and get drunk and watch football. For me, as I said earlier, I just never fitted in that type of environment. Now, if there is another thing that motivates me so much, is paying for a high quality doctor. Now, you probably know where I'm going with this. The experience I had with the NHS just made me really depressed. And I heard somebody else talk about the problem with the NHS. Now, the crazy thing was the doctor that excuse me, the doctor that was seeing for an appointment was the same ethnicity as me. Now, when I went in to figure out how to solve my chest problem, and towards the end of the appointment, I was trying to ask her more questions to figure out if I needed to know anything else. And she just straight up told me we have other patients that we need to help. The way she said it to me, it just felt very rude of her to say. And I remember her calling me some other day after her review my blood test results. She told me that I am vitamin D deficient, if that's the way to say it. She sent me an article through SMS, and I asked her on the phone, what do I do with my vitamin D levels? How can I um, increase or solve this, problem? And she told me to read the article. She didn't answer my question. I don't know if that's the way she grew up to respond like that, but it really pissed me off. It went under my skin. So because of this event I experienced, I didn't like, it wasn't pleasant. I'm very motivated to make more money so I could eventually one day get my own private doctor, so I don't have to go through that experience ever again. I probably will make a part two about my experience with living in the UK. It's just a very interesting topic, and I feel as though I had to talk about this. Maybe for people need to hear what I have to say because of what I've been through up until this point in the country, and I didn't like it, right? I just became very miserable while living a life of quiet desperation. And so, for all the reasons that I mentioned, that's why I got out. And fast forward up until this point, my life is completely different now than before. But I probably will talk more in depth in a future video on how I managed to prepare myself financially when I was living in the UK to eventually leave, which could be a great video to help you with motivation and to learn how to apply what I done, which when you hear my story and what I had to do, you will realize that it just wasn't easy, man, and it did take a long time. But I will catch you all in a future video. But for now, take care, everyone.